So, along the lines of what Dave even started the day off with, sort of talking about where's cloud going? What are we doing next? I started thinking about operations. I've focused for the most part in my career and the consulting that we do on how operations is changing over time. And we see a lot of interest in things like DevOps, right? That's sort of the first thing people talk about. And to me, DevOps is an interesting developer-focused view on what needs to happen with an application. All right, so we think about sort of the development-driven application components, the automation of those resources, the entire flow of, hey, how do I get from my code into production? And we automate all those tasks. And from a developer perspective, usually what that means is I'm going to automate a specific set of tasks, and when it's in production, I'm done, because I have done what DevOps needs to do. Now, we all know it's more than that. There's continuous integration and deployment, and sort of the cycle of these sorts of services. But I really think there's another way of thinking about this. And if we sort of step into the Kubernetes flow, the Kubernetes worldview, right, we see a shift in what operations is starting to mean, because the infrastructure operations, what I think of as classic operations, where I look at compliance and security and infrastructure lifecycle, the physical infrastructure, for example, right? There's sort of a shift that's happening because now we're starting to think more along the lines of data collection and analytics and response to those analyses, right? There are a number of tools out there that just focus on the analytics of your current running application. So that's good. That's sort of the next step. And in the Kubernetes world, we have really nice integrated tools to start looking at the analytics of our platform. Not just the application, but even the underlying platform can be captured at the same time. So if we look at Prometheus as an example, right, we can capture the node statistics, we can capture I/O statistics. Now that we're looking at service mesh on top, right, we can even look at the transaction statistics of our application. Right, so we can start collecting more and more of this data. The next shift that I'm seeing, this question of Helm or operators. Helm to me is, again, a very classic DevOps-focused concept. Right? I describe my environment, I describe and maybe even enable some of the automation within that environment, and then I step this into the next level. Right? I need to think about the rest of my environment. Operators are, I think, the beginning of that concept. Came sort of, again, from the operational mindset. After the application is running, what happens? How do I deal with upgrades? It might not be as simple as just swapping out an image. Right? That certainly helps. The whole container model makes it so much easier to upgrade our applications, but there is still infrastructure that has to happen. Database changes may need to occur. Right? How do I deal with failures in an upgrade process? Right? I leave myself out to open to some pretty painful nights if my upgrade process of migrating an image, even using a Helm chart, which has pre and post deploy hooks now available to me. What happens if that post deploy hook doesn't work? Right? Where am I now? I still haven't actually thought about the entire process. And I think we can take this to that future level. I'm starting to think about SmartOps. Right? We can start collecting the data about our application and start incorporating that into the environment. In order to do that, one of the things that we need to do is think about not just turning on our application, but turning on the analytics for our application as well. Right? So we need to start thinking about what is it that you're actually monitoring? What are the alerts that are appropriate to my application? So I think this comes right back to the developers. Right? The developers have to start thinking not just about their application. Right? If any of you have been watching the sort of growing upswell of security concerns and questions about containers, especially with companies now coming out with security products at the underlay of the container, like Kata and like the Kata Containers Project or Google gVisor, people are starting to say, oh, we can help fix that, right? So now that becomes important. I think analytics is that next area. It's that next step in this process to further enhance and understand what our applications are doing. And they'll help as well. So if I am using an automated tool like Helm, or all the things that we saw this morning, right? All these great tools that really sort of start to encompass the automation process of our environments much more effectively, tie them into code-driven models like the GitOps and GitCube and what was the other one? I've already forgotten it. but all these great tools that really, I think, embody the developer mindset. Let's add in the rest of the operations process as well. Let's really get to true end-to-end DevOps, including these analytics. And really, that was what I had. So, any quick questions?
Okay. Anybody have any questions about SmartOps? Anybody doing SmartOps? Anybody putting any sort of machine learning into your?
Well, I will throw up one more thing then. No, I'm not, no throwing up. I have started looking at this from some of the customers I've talked to, right? There's the classic issue of not knowing how your infrastructure is being deployed, because again, the analytics aren't being deployed with our applications, so we're not collecting this information. So I'm looking at building a project that it will go open source once we actually have enough source to open source, but it's called Clumon, clumon.com, C-L-U-M-O-N.com. It's just an application environment, and the idea behind this is let's capture some of the statistics, especially given, again, the ability for a Kubernetes environment to give me data about the storage that I'm consuming, the compute resources that I'm consuming, the network access that I'm using. Right, all these different resources are all being captured in one location. I can now collect those metrics, centralize them, and now start performing systems-level analytics. How's my application environment running? Right, so we're building a platform, including a basic machine learning engine to basically understand, is my application running effectively? Am I being efficient in my utilization of the resources that I've deployed? Right, I deployed XL nodes for my compute nodes, but they're not being used at XL level. Maybe I should rebuild my application, my environment with tiny nodes instead, right? Let's get some of this operational complexity managed in a more efficient fashion. Yes?
Here, hold on.
So tell me if I'm thinking of someone right. Maybe like the next stage after Clumon is that once you get more data accumulated, then maybe you can actually do defense ops.
Yes. Right, so you can start adding in security data as well, right? I mean, are your CVEs growing or decreasing over time, right? This is the analytics that I think is really important as a part of the operations model, right? And when I start adding in alerts to this, right, alerts that can be triggers to events, or maybe they're not even alerts, they're just events that are sort of telling me something needs to change. Hey, you know, this system's been running for 5 hours and is using 30% of your system resources, and we've modeled the fact that there are smaller resources that you could deploy. Is it worth you considering a change? Right? Historically, given the machine learning input to this, historically you've seen that, yeah, if you let it run for another 5 days, it's not going to go back up. Right? So yeah, it might make sense to trigger this.
Oh, hold on.
So I could use this for a lot of, I can see a lot of ways this type of capability can be used. I could use it for optimizing my expense ops.
Yeah. I like to think of efficiency ops because it's not always an expense question, right? But yeah, exactly. All right.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
Well, thank you all. Clumon.com, sign up.